It was one of those evenings where everything feels muted. The air outside was still, the kind of heavy stillness that presses against the windows. I was sitting at my kitchen table, a cup of tea in front of me, steam curling lazily into the dim light. My laptop was open, but I wasn't really working, just scrolling, letting the day slip away. That's when my phone buzzed. Not rang, buzzed. A short, insistent vibration against the wood. I glanced at the screen. Clark and Partners, law offices. I knew the name. My dad's lawyer. For a moment, I just stared at it, like maybe if I didn't answer, the moment would disappear. I could pretend I never saw it. But my thumb betrayed me, sliding the green icon across the screen. Hello? The voice on the other end was polite, rehearsed, almost too steady. This is Mary Ann from Clark and Partners. We're calling to inform you that the reading of your father's will has been scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m. at our downtown office. I remember blinking at the calendar on the wall. Thursday. 2 days away. They said it so matter-of-factly, like it was just another appointment. But for me, it was a knife sliding between the ribs. My father had only been gone 3 weeks. 3 weeks since I stood in the rain outside the hospital, the smell of disinfectant still clinging to my clothes. Now, the will I swallowed. Right, I'll be there. We hung up, and I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand. My tea had gone cold. Here's the thing, I'd been working at my dad's company since I was 16. Summers in the warehouse, winters in the office. I knew every inch of that place, the hum of the machines, the squeak in the floorboard outside his office, even the old brass key that stuck if you turned it too fast, and he knew me. My work ethic, my dedication. We didn't always agree. He had a temper. I had stubbornness, but I thought, in the end, there was no question. The business would come to me. So why? Did I feel this creeping unease? Maybe it was the way my stepbrother, Jason, had been hovering in the background lately. He'd only joined the company 2 years ago, after bouncing between jobs and failed side hustles. Dad had brought him in as an extra pair of hands. But Jason had a knack for being in the right place at the right time, especially when Dad was watching. I pushed the thought away. No, this was just a formality. Dad would have made sure I was taken care of. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the refrigerator hum through the silence. I remembered the last Sunday we'd spent together, sitting in his office. He'd been going through old contracts, glasses perched on the end of his nose while I updated the inventory system. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. It was the kind of comfortable silence that only comes from years of working side by side. If I'd known it was the last time, maybe I would have said more, asked more, told him I was ready to carry it all. Instead, all I have now is the ticking of the clock in my kitchen, each second a reminder that Thursday was coming. And with it, answers I wasn't sure I wanted. Thursday morning had the kind of gray sky that makes everything look washed out. I parked outside the law office, staring up at the glass building. It looked cold, impersonal, the kind of place where decisions are made that change lives, but not in the warm, movie-ending way. I took the elevator up to the 7th floor. My reflection in the steel doors looked tired. My eyes were puffy. I'd tried to dress in something that said respectful without saying trying too hard. Black slacks, cream sweater, hair pulled back. The outfit didn't matter, but it felt like armor. When the doors opened, I saw him, Jason, leaning against the wall by the reception desk. Scrolling on his phone like this was just another Thursday. He looked up, smiled, that half smile he does that always feels more like a smirk. "Hey," he said, like we were meeting for coffee. I nodded. "Hey." The receptionist led us into a conference room. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. On the wall was an oversized abstract painting, blue swirls, jagged white lines, the kind of thing that makes you feel unsettled, without knowing why. At the end of the long table sat Mr. Clark, my father's lawyer. White hair, gold watch, glasses perched on his nose. He gestured for us to sit. When I pulled out the chair, the legs scraped against the floor. That sound cut through the quiet like nails on a CHALKBOARD. Mr. Clark cleared his throat. "Thank you both for coming. This won't take long." I folded my hands in my lap, trying to steady my breathing. He began reading. The legal phrasing was clinical, almost robotic. Lists of possessions, small bequests, mentions of cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My name came up here and there, a watch, a few personal items. I tried to follow along, but my brain kept skipping ahead to the part, and then it came. To my stepson, Jason Miller, I leave controlling interest in company name, along with all associated assets and operations. My stomach dropped. It felt like the words hung in the air for a moment, hovering between us. I stared at the papers in front of me, my eyes scanning the text as if maybe I'd misheard. Jason's hand twitched. I caught it. That tiny movement. Of satisfaction, Mr. Clark kept reading, but I couldn't hear him. It was like my ears were underwater. My thoughts were loud, though. How? Why? All the years I'd put into that business, the late nights, the weekends, the sacrifices, and it was his. The reading ended. There was this awkward pause. Mr. Clark looked at me. "Do you have any questions?" I wanted to scream. Yeah, just one. What the hell was my father thinking? But instead, I said, "No, thank you." My voice sounded calm. To calm, Jason stood, slid the paperwork into a folder, and gave me that polite, almost pitying look. "We'll talk soon," he said. I didn't answer. In the hallway, the fluorescent lights felt harsher. My footsteps echoed against the tile. I pressed the elevator button, the cold metal biting my fingertip. When the doors closed around me, the composure cracked. My throat tightened. My chest ached. I had come here expecting confirmation of what I'd believed my whole life, that I was the one meant to carry my father's legacy instead. I left holding nothing but a manila envelope and 1,000 questions that would never get answered. The drive out of the city felt longer than usual, even though I took the same route. I always did. The late morning traffic was crawling, the sky still that heavy, unbroken gray. It matched the inside of my chest, flat, colorless, almost suffocating. I had the radio on, but I wasn't listening. Some upbeat pop song was playing, the kind that usually fills in the quiet without much thought. But now it felt wrong, like a stranger talking too loudly in a room where someone's crying. I reached out and switched it off. The silence wasn't any better. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My knuckles were pale, and I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. The words from the conference room were still looping in my head to my stepson. Jason Miller, I leave controlling interest. It was like they'd been carved into the inside of my skull. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face looked blank, not sad, not angry, just empty. That scared me more than anything. The smell of lemon cleaner from the lawyer's office still clung to my clothes. I rolled down the window just to breathe something else, letting in a rush of cold air that made my eyes water. And then, without warning, the memories started hitting. I was 16 again, sitting in the passenger seat of Dad's old pickup truck. It was summer, windows down, country roads, the smell of fresh-cut grass. He'd just picked me up from my first day working at the company warehouse. My hands were sore, my shirt smelled like cardboard and machine oil. He'd glanced over at me, grinning. "So, you still think you can handle this?" I remember laughing, wiping sweat off my forehead. "Yeah, I think I can." That was the start. It's the start of what I thought was our plan. The light turned green. Pulling me back to the present, I passed the company building on my way home. I didn't mean to, it was just muscle memory. The way you drive past your high school years after you've graduated, it looked the same as always, the faded brick, the old sign out front, the same dent in the metal siding from when a delivery. Truck backed into it in '09, but now didn't feel like mine anymore. Jason's car was in the parking lot. I knew it instantly. The silver BMW he'd bought last year, even though he could barely make the payments. I wondered if he'd already been inside today, sitting at Dad's desk, pretending he belonged there. The thought made something twist in my stomach by the time I pulled into my driveway. The rain had started soft at first, then heavier, tapping against the windshield in uneven rhythms. I didn't move, just sat there, engine running, watching the drops streak down the glass. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Jason's name lit up the screen. I stared at it until it stopped. No voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk. Not to him. Not yet. I turned off the car, grabbed the manila envelope from the passenger seat, and stepped into the rain. It soaked into my sweater instantly, but I didn't care. Inside, the house was quiet. I dropped the envelope on the kitchen counter without opening it and went straight to the sink, running my hands under cold water. I don't know why. Maybe to wash off the smell of that office. Or maybe because it felt like the only thing I could control right then. I stood there for a long time, staring at my own reflection in the window above the sink, rain blurring the world outside. This was supposed to be my legacy, my future. And in a 15-minute meeting, it was gone. The thing about shock is, it's not always loud. Sometimes it's just a slow, quiet rewiring of your brain. You go back over old moments, replaying them in your head. But now they look different. Feel different. The next few days blurred together. I didn't do much. Didn't really talk to anyone. I'd wake up, make coffee, sit at the kitchen table with the manila envelope still sitting there like it was watching me. I couldn't bring myself to open it. Not yet. Instead, my mind kept wandering backward, picking at memories like loose threads on a sweater. I remembered Christmas 2 years ago, the first year Jason joined the company. Dad had given him this leather briefcase, real leather, the kind that smells rich and ages beautifully. I'd gotten a toolbox at the time. I told myself it made sense. Jason was more of an office guy. I was more hands-on. But now, I wondered if it was more than that. Then there was last summer's barbecue at Dad's house. Jason. And I had been standing by the grill, waiting for the burgers to finish, when Dad came over. I clapped him on the shoulder and said, "One day you're going to be running this place, son." I'd laughed, thinking it was a joke. Jason hadn't laughed. He'd just smiled, that same small smile he gave me in the lawyer's office. The more I thought about it, the more little things came back. Like how Dad started inviting Jason to management lunches without me, or how they'd go into Dad's office and shut the door, talking for hours while I was on the floor solving problems. At the time, I'd brushed it off. I trusted him. Trusted both of them. Now, all those moments felt like puzzle pieces I hadn't realized were even part of the picture, and the picture. Well, it wasn't me in the center anymore. One night I went digging through an old photo box in my closet. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see proof that what I remembered was real. There was one picture that stopped me. It was from the year before Jason joined the company. Dad and I were at the annual trade show, standing in front of our booth. He had his arm around me, both of us grinning at the camera. I looked young, proud, certain of where my life was going. I traced my finger over the edge of the photo, wondering when that certainty had started to fade. It's strange grief isn't just about losing a person. Sometimes it's about losing the version of the past you thought you had. And the more I rewrote it in my head, the more I realized maybe I'd been losing my place in Dad's story for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The days after the will reading stretched out like an empty road, no calls from the company, no texts from Jason, not even a check-in from Mr. Clark. At first I thought the quiet might help, figured I could breathe, put some distance between myself and that conference room maybe. I don't know. Start figuring out what life looked like without the business. But the silence didn't feel like space. It felt like erasure. I went through the motions. I'd get up, make coffee, stare at my laptop like I was going to start job hunting, but I never did. My inbox was full of unopened emails. The manila envelope from the will reading was still on the counter, right where I dropped it the day I got home. It was strange. The envelope wasn't heavy, but it felt heavy. Like it was holding every decision Dad made that I didn't understand, every reason he never gave me. The world outside kept moving. I'd hear the garbage truck rumble down the street, watch the neighbors' kids ride their bikes past my window, see the mail carrier pause at my box. Meanwhile, and my life was frozen in that lemon-scented conference room. I told myself I didn't care what was happening at the company, that I didn't need to drive past the building. But some mornings, I'd catch myself halfway there before I realized what I was doing. And every time, I'd turn around, because the truth was, I wasn't ready to see it without me. One night I sat on the couch with the TV on mute, flipping through channels without watching anything. The light from the screen flickered across the room, and in the reflection of the window, I saw myself slouched, still in the same sweater I'd worn 3 days ago. I barely recognized the person looking back. There was a time, not long ago, when my phone never stopped ringing. Employees calling with questions, Dad checking in on sales numbers, vendors confirming shipments. I'd get home, toss my keys on the counter, and still be answering emails over dinner. Now, I think it's amazing how quickly your life can go quiet, how easily you can be written out of a story you thought was yours. It was exactly 2 weeks after the will reading when my phone finally rang. I didn't recognize the number at first. It was local, but not saved in my contacts. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, maybe habit, maybe curiosity, made me swipe the screen. Hello? A pause. Then a voice I knew all too well. Hey, it's Jason. We need to talk. Jason's voice sounded different, not smug, not casual. There was a crack in it, like someone trying to hold a heavy box but losing their grip. I know. It's late, he said, but something's happened at the company. I didn't say anything at first. I just let the silence hang, because honestly, the only thing I wanted to say was, and why should I care? But my curiosity won. What happened? He exhaled, and I could almost hear him running a hand over his face. It's bad. Real bad. We lost our biggest client. One Dad always said was our backbone. Without them, trailed off. Waited. Without them, we're screwed. I leaned back on the couch, the phone pressed to my ear. The room around me felt smaller, so call a meeting. Figure it out. You're the one running things now, remember? There was a pause. Longer this time. I can't fix this alone. I thought I could, but I can't. You know, the systems, the contacts, the way Dad did things. I need your help. I almost laughed. Not the happy kind. The sharp, bitter kind. This is interesting. Ago, you inherited the whole business. Today you want me to save it? I'm not asking you to save it, he said quickly. Just help me keep it from falling apart, please. That word please landed heavier than I expected. Jason wasn't the type to ask for help. Not from me. I got up and walked to the kitchen, staring at that manila envelope still on the counter, the one with my father's signature inside, confirming that everything I'd worked for now belonged to someone else. I wanted to say no. I wanted to let him sink. Let the whole thing crumble and prove what I'd been saying in my head since that day, that Jason was never cut out for. But then. I thought about Dad, about the smell of machine oil in the warehouse, the hum of the office on a Monday morning, the people who'd worked there for decades, who trusted our family to keep the lights on. And I realized if the company went under, it wouldn't just be Jason's failure. It would be our family's name, my father's name. When do you need me there? I asked. There was the faintest sound of relief in his voice. Tomorrow morning, first thing. I hung up without saying goodbye. The rest of the night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling that familiar tug in my chest, the one that used to come when there was a crisis at the company, and I knew I had to step in. Only this time, it wasn't my company, it was his, and yet here I was ready to walk back through those doors. The next morning, the air was sharp with that early winter bite. My breath fogged in front of me as I walked up to the building. It looked exactly the same, which somehow made it worse. The faded brick, the peeling paint on the front door frame, the hum of the old neon sign buzzing faintly above the entrance. For years, those sights had been part of my morning routine. Now, they felt like walking into someone else's life. I pushed open the door. That smell hit me instantly. Paper, coffee, and the faint trace of machine oil from the warehouse in the back. God, it was like stepping into a photograph. Detail was frozen in time, except for me. The receptionist, Maria, looked up from her desk. Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw the relief there. "You're here," she said, standing quickly. "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Jason called. She glanced toward the hallway that led to Dad's office. He's in there. He's been, well, you'll see. I walked through the hallway slowly, my fingertips brushing the familiar framed photos on the wall. Trade shows, charity events, company picnics. My dad in almost every one of them, smiling that big, confident smile. When I reached the door to his old office, I hesitated. For years, that room had been ours. We'd sit across from each other, going over numbers, solving problems, sometimes arguing, sometimes laughing. The brass doorknob was cool under my hand. I turned it and stepped inside. Jason was behind the desk, not Dad's chair. Well, it was Dad's chair, but Jason was in it now. His tie was loose, the top button of his shirt undone. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. Papers were scattered across the desk in messy stacks. When he saw me, he stood quickly. Thanks for coming. I didn't answer right away. I was too busy taking in the room. The blinds were half closed, letting in slivers of pale morning light. Dad's old mug was still on the bookshelf, the one with the faded company logo. The plant in the corner, the one I used to water, was drooping, leaves curling at the edges. It felt wrong. Not because Jason was there, but because the life had gone out of the place. We got to work. Or rather, I got to work. I sifted through the financial reports, scanning the numbers. It was right, it was bad. The client that pulled out had been nearly a quarter of our annual revenue. The contracts for the next quarter were thin. Jason hovered, trying to explain what he'd done so far. His voice had that defensive edge, like he already knew I'd find mistakes. And I did a lot of them. Deals he'd agreed to without reading the fine print. Expenses he hadn't tracked properly. Calls he hadn't returned. At one point, I stepped into the warehouse. The machines were still running, but slower. The usual chatter from the floor was quieter. A few of the guys spotted me and nodded, their faces a mix of surprise and something else. Hope, maybe. I nodded back, but inside, it hurt, because I realized they didn't see Jason as the one who could save this place. They saw me, and yet, legally, I wasn't even part of it anymore. By the time I left that day, my head was pounding. Jason thanked me again, promised he'd follow my lead for now. But I knew this wasn't a one-day fix. As I walked out into the cold evening air, I glanced back at the building. It was strange. It still felt like home, and that might have been the most painful part. It happened late on a Thursday. We'd been in Dad's old office for hours, going through contracts, chasing down vendors, trying to plug holes faster than new ones opened. A coffee had gone cold hours ago. Jason was pacing, rubbing the back of his neck like he was trying to physically push the stress out of his body. Finally, he stopped mid-stride and just looked at me. "I owe you the truth," he said. His voice was low, almost hesitant. I didn't answer, just leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. He sat down across from me. "You've been wondering why Dad left the company to me." I let out a short laugh, not the amused kind. Wondering. That's one way to put it. Jason glanced down at his hands. "Thought you didn't want it." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "What?" he told me. "You'd been pulling away, that you were tired of it, that you were looking at other opportunities." I shook my head, incredulous. "It's not true. I lived for this place." "I know that now," Jason said quickly. "But Dad didn't. You remember last year when you took that 2-week trip to Colorado?" "Yeah, first vacation I'd taken in 5 years. What about it?" "He thought you were. Testing the waters, seeing if you wanted to live somewhere. Else, maybe start something new." I sat there, stunned. A 2-week vacation, that's what it boiled down to. Jason leaned forward. He told me he didn't want to trap you. He thought giving the business to me would give you freedom, that you'd be relieved. Relieved, the word made my stomach turn. Then Jason reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. It was old, the edges yellowed, Dad's handwriting scrawled across the front. "My name? I found this in the safe," he said quietly. "It's for you." I took it, my hands suddenly heavy. The paper felt fragile, like it could tear just from me breathing on it. Inside was a single sheet, written in Dad's rough block letters. He wrote about how proud he was of me. How he trusted me to build a life I wanted, not one I felt obligated to live. How Jason needed the responsibility more, and how he hoped I'd understand one day at the bottom. There was one line that burned into my chest. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I think you deserve to be free. I folded the letter slowly, my fingers shaking. Jason's voice was quiet. I think he made a mistake, and I think he knew it. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded because part of me wanted to be angry forever. And part of me wanted to believe Dad really had been trying to protect me in his own deeply flawed way. The morning after Jason handed me Dad's letter, I sat in my kitchen staring at it again, the paper soft from where my fingers had kept, folding and unfolding it. I thought about putting it away somewhere safe, a drawer, a box, maybe even the manila envelope I still hadn't opened. But I left it on the table instead. I wanted to see it. I wanted the reminder that, for better or worse, Dad's choice hadn't been about replacing me, even if that's how it felt. And then I went to work. The next few weeks blurred into a rhythm I hadn't felt since before the will reading. I was in the office by 7:30, coffee in hand, running numbers before Jason even arrived. I called old contacts, smoothed over vendor relationships, renegotiated contracts. I got the production floor humming again, literally and figuratively. Jason followed my lead, and to his credit, he didn't fight me on it. Maybe he was too tired. Maybe he knew he was in over his head, or maybe he just trusted me. There was one afternoon I'll never forget. I was in the warehouse, talking to Sam, one of our oldest employees, about adjusting schedules to save on overtime. He grinned and said, "Feels like old times, having you back here." That hit me harder than I expected. Because for a moment, it did feel like old times. The smell of sawdust, the clink of tools, the steady hum of the conveyor belts, all of it felt like home again. But this time, I knew it was temporary. At night, I'd get home exhausted, my clothes smelling like coffee and paper dust, my voice hoarse from meetings. And yet, it was a good kind of tired. The kind you feel when you've actually built or saved something. Still, never forgot the truth. This wasn't my company anymore. Every decision I made, every fix I put in place, it all went back under Jason's name. And oddly enough, that started to matter less to me. By the end of the month, we'd stabilized enough to survive the next quarter. The panic was gone, replaced with cautious optimism. Even the warehouse crew seemed lighter, their conversations louder, their steps quicker. One evening, Jason stopped by my desk. He didn't say much, just handed me a cup of coffee and muttered, "Couldn't have done this without you." I didn't say it out loud, but the truth was, I didn't do it for him. I did it for Dad. For the people who'd built this place brick by brick, and maybe just a little for myself. The last day I walked into that office, it didn't feel like an ending. Not at first. The place was buzzing the way it used to, phones ringing, printers running, laughter drifting from the break room. Even the air smelled warmer, like fresh coffee and machine oil. Jason was in his office, door half open. I knocked once and stepped inside. He looked up from a pile of paperwork, the same pen Dad used to keep in his pocket resting in his hand. "Heading out?" I told him. "For the day?" I shook my head. "For good." I didn't make a speech. I didn't want the awkward hugs or the forced goodbyes. I just walked the floor one last time. I ran my hand along the rail of the upper catwalk, watched the conveyor belts carry pieces of wood from one end of the shop to the other, the way I'd seen them do since I was 16. Sam caught my eye, gave me a nod. No words. We didn't need any. Out in the parking lot, the late afternoon sun was dipping low, turning everything gold. I opened my car door, but before I got in, I looked back at the building. This place had been my inheritance in every way except on paper. I had poured years into it, fought for it, defended it, even when it wasn't mine to claim, and now didn't need it anymore. On the drive home, I thought about Dad. I thought about the mornings we'd arrive before dawn, the way he'd hand me a cup of coffee before we got out of the truck, how he'd walk the floor with his sleeves rolled up, talking to everyone like they were family. For the first time since the will reading, I didn't feel bitter, just grateful. He'd left me something after all, not the building, not the title, but the knowledge of how to build something worth keeping alive. When I got home, I set Dad's letter back in its envelope and placed it in the top drawer of my desk. Not hidden, not displayed, just there. I didn't know what I was building next, but I knew it would be mine from the start, and that was enough. Asterisk.